Welcome everyone to Design Thinking, Much Needed Mindsets in Challenging Times, from Melissa Lyon. Melissa, as you know, is an Associate Principal at Hive Legal, but is here today particularly because she is a geeky guru of the Legalpreneurs Lab in this subject area as well. If you've not had the opportunity to work with Mal or to listen to her before, then let me tell you, you are indeed in for a treat. Mal is one of the preeminent proponents and practitioners in legal design thinking in particular. And I say the legal part of it here just in terms of everyone knowing that she works in and is very focused on design thinking in the legal ecosystem. It's an amazing time to be working in this area. We were just chatting before we kicked off today, and the amazing part of it for me is that we've really gone from a concept of design thinking now, whether people know it or not, into the reality of putting it into practice. And they're the very sorts of things that Mal is going to chat with you about today. So without any more from me, Mal, over to you. We're delighted to have you. Of course, welcome back to the centre, and it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Terry. Thank you. Welcome everyone today. I'm really looking forward to talking to you about something that is close to my heart and I'm passionate about, and that is design thinking, and the fact that I think that it can really help us make our legal industry and profession a much better place. I also am very excited to be able to do this webinar today because I think the times that we're in at the moment, and I'm going to resist saying unprecedented times, but the times that we're in at the moment are really giving us the opportunity to leverage the mindsets and the ways of thinking that we need in terms of improving the experience for the people that we work with and the people that we work for, our teammates and our clients. So excited to get started, and before I get started into the content, I'd just like to tell you a bit about me. I'm Sir Lionel, obviously, as Terry said. I'm an Associate Principal at Hive Legal. I like to describe myself as a design thinker. I am also a business developer and an innovator, and in the past I have been a practicing litigation lawyer as well for a number of years. But the main thing that I really want to talk to you or let you know about me today is that I'm really committed to improving the experience for those in the profession and those served by it. That's something that drives me in terms of the different ways of thinking, the different business models that can be used, the more innovative processes that we can use and assist our clients with is really important to me, and that's what drives me, and that has brought me at this stage of my career to really look at and use design thinking in as many different ways as we can, or as I can, and we can at Hive. So what to expect from today? For those of you who don't necessarily understand the concept of design thinking, I'll do a quick run through about what that actually is. I also want to talk about how it can be used, and I'll give you a number of different examples of the way that we've used it at Hive Legal over the years. I think that there can be some confusion in terms of what design thinking is and how design thinking can be used, because a lot of it jumps to the visual design and what things look like, as opposed to actually how they're built or what thinking's gone behind what you're designing. So I really want to give you some quite concrete examples of how we've actually used design thinking at Hive. Importantly, I also want to look at or do a bit of a self-reflection on us as a legal industry, because I think there are a number of mindsets and ways that we have worked traditionally within legal which actually stop us really benefiting from using design thinking in a way that it can help us as an industry. And so I'll do that self-reflection bit and look at why there are some mindsets and ways that we work that stop us using it. Most importantly for this session, and I want to spend a lot of time on this, I really want to talk about why design thinking is needed now in the COVID-19 world that we find ourselves in, and also post-COVID-19 as well. But most importantly there, I want to look and drill down a bit on the changes in mindsets and ways of working that I have witnessed over the last 12 weeks or so. As we've been into lockdown, we've done different things, we've had to change the way that we're working. And there's a beautiful parallel between some of those changes in mindset and the mindsets that we need as design thinkers in the legal profession to take the opportunities that we've got there going forward. So we'll spend some time on that. Also looking into how that we can do design thinking in the virtual world as well, because it's very doable, and I think there are benefits in doing it that way as well. Obviously craving getting back into the face-to-face situation that I love to be in, where we're facilitating and we're actually together building and designing different things. But there are other alternatives out there for us to use, not just now, but into the future, which can help us work across different organisations, different countries, different states, different teams. So there's an even better opportunity there for collaboration. And I'd also like to talk about what's coming next in terms of really how we can use design thinking more in the profession. So let's get started. You'll find a lot of different definitions of design thinking. I think that's a good thing. I think you can make it what you want to make it, as long as you're using the mindsets and taking from the different processes which will actually get you the result that you need for the end user. But I really like this definition that comes from IDEO. Design thinking has a human-centred core. It encourages organisations to focus on the people they're creating for, which leads to better products, services, and internal processes. So it's really looking at what we're trying to achieve here and who we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on the humans involved in these processes, because at the end of the day, they are the people who are going to be assessing whether or not we've provided them with a good experience. It also has that broad range, doesn't it? We talk about products, services, internal processes. That is a really broad range in terms of how we can use that. So I like to have a bit more of an all-encompassing definition that I use, but I would encourage people to look into it for yourselves as well, to see what suits you in terms of how you're going to use it, and provide your own definition if that's what helps. The way that I see design thinking helping us is that it can help us identify and capture ideas. We were talking before we started this webinar about, innovators and the way that we think, and often there's lots of good ideas floating around and we capture them and we do things, and we might not, we might put them aside. What design thinking does is actually gives you a way of identifying those ideas, always with your end user or the humans involved in the process or the product or whatever that you're designing. But it really does give us a bit more of a framework for how we identify and capture those ideas, and capture them in terms of how they affect and will impact on the people that we're designing for. So it really helps us to do that. It then also helps us develop and implement those ideas. I know in the past, I think I've seen it happen before. You think up great ideas and then you don't quite know how to get them started, or you wait until they're perfect until you actually launch them, or you wait until someone else comes in and does something else. Design thinking gives you a much more agile way of actually developing those ideas and developing them more quickly and actually implementing them and testing them. So it's a way of doing that. Most importantly too, it's a way of improving on them. So how many times have we had a great idea and just thought, wow, that's fantastic, I love my idea, I'm going to implement it, I'm not going to change it because it's the perfect idea. And then we find that people don't actually like it. People don't actually use the document that you've designed. People don't like the process because they find it too complex. You've always got to be looking at how you actually improve on that. And design thinking gives us a way of thinking and a mindset which helps us to do that as well. So those three things. It helps us to identify and capture ideas, develop and implement them, and improve on them. Most importantly to me is that it actually helps us to improve the experience for the people that we're designing for, the people even involved in the design process, because it takes that human-centered approach to what we do. So we hear a lot, especially in other industries, around the terms UX, CX and EX, users, customers and clients and employees, experience of those groups. that's where I see design thinking really making a difference, because at the end of the day, what we're doing is designing something that will help improve the experience for the people that are using it or involved in the process as we go along. So always using that hashtag term, improve the experience. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I do want to give those of you who don't necessarily have the background in how design thinking works, just an idea of the process. Now, I actually think that this process can be used along with other processes as well. And I like to think that people can make the process their own, depending on what they're designing or what organisation they're working in, or different things that might impact on what they're doing. But as its simplest type form, design thinking has these different elements to it. So first of all, empathy, and we'll go into this a bit later on, but really having the empathy for your end user and the people involved in the process that you're designing, process or whatever you're designing. So really looking at it from their point of view, what their pain points are, what their problems are. Then defining the problem that you're actually trying to solve. And that definition part of it is actually where you need to actually look at all, distill the information that you've got previously and work out what the actual problem is. And then we talk about the ideas of how might we statements, how might we make the process of a contract approval process much better for those that are involved in it. And we actually make sure that we've defined that problem in a way that we can then go on to design a process which will end up being a better result for the end user. The ideation part of it is much more where the creativity comes in, bringing all those different ideas in, bringing in the different skill sets that are needed, and that could look like a sprint, you know, that sprint could be from half a day long to a number of days long. It depends obviously on the complexity of what you're designing, and that sprint session, or those sprint sessions, are really where you can bring in all of those different skill sets and ideate and brainstorm and think big and think creatively and come up with ideas and ways to solve the problem that you're designing for. And then the prototype stage, having fun, experimenting, building something, and building to think, because when you build something, you actually find that the ideas will come to you better because you've got something. How often do we think, I've got to write that blog, or I've got to do that opinion, I'll just make a start and then I'll see how I go. It actually starts you thinking about what you can do and how you can build on it when you've got something started, and you can continue to build on it and have other people bring in those ideas and ways to build it as well. Testing, the idea of actually getting the end users to test what you're building, so that you get that feedback and you know that you're on the right track in terms of getting that feedback, or what you're designing. You're getting that feedback that then allows you to iterate, to improve the process or the product or what you're designing. This can be a circle that you might only need to do once. It might be a circle that jumps around, and I would say should be a circle that jumps around, because it would be very unusual that you would have something perfect straight away using this process. Often you need to, and I've used this analogy before, often this circle will look like a bowl of spaghetti because you're going through the different stages, rechecking, getting more information, going back to the empathy stage because you haven't quite hit it and got it right. So that's the process. And then coming back to how we can use it, so bearing in mind how we can use it. The ways that we've been using it at Hive is to design any process, product, document, service, project or strategy to improve the experience for the end user and those involved. So it can be very broad in terms of how it can be used. I'll go into this a bit further later on, but we've actually been using it more in terms of assisting organisations and committees to actually really think about what their purpose is as a committee or an organisation, their vision, their values, and then actually looking at the strategies for them to get to where they need to achieve their purpose and their vision. So we're using it in that planning type space as well. Okay, some examples from Hive before we jump into the mindsets about how we're using it. We've developed our own design thinking framework, which we call Hive Think P. The P standing for the power of purpose, because we believe that to actually understand the purpose of what you're doing or your project is really important right from the start. We're a purpose-driven firm. Our purpose and vision is to improve the experience for our team and our clients, as you've heard me say a number of times. And so we really see that as an important part of this. So we've melded together the concepts of design thinking and the power of purpose to come up with a framework that we use to do the things that we were talking about just before in terms of the way that we design processes and products, services, and also assist our clients, consulting to our clients and other firms in terms of their strategies and business models and that type of thing as well. At Hive, we've used it, I think one of the first things we used design thinking and Hive Think to do was to develop our outsourced GC model. So we provide outsourced legal assistance to a number of our clients under what we call the Hive GC Plus model. So the way that we did that was we talked to a number of GCs and legal counsel. We asked them what their pain points were. We asked them what they needed and what they valued, and we designed our service around those things. And we continue. Over the years, we've had this in place now for probably around 4 years. We're continually iterating that model, continually, I think, making it better, continually taking the feedback that we need to from our clients, and also making it bespoke for those clients that value different parts of the model as well. So it's a good example of how that can be used. But once again, that need to continually go back and iterate it and not fall in love with your idea and keep it the same way. Often I use that idea of not setting and forgetting. You've really got to keep iterating as you go. Another one is our internal pricing process. So at Hive, we don't price based on time, we price based on value. So we agree with our clients before we start the work or the project or the matter that we're doing with them. We agree a fixed price that's based on value and not the time spent. For us, that meant that we had to actually completely redesign our pricing process, and we eventually started using our Hive Think or our design thinking framework to actually develop that internal pricing process. And that involved having people from across the firm, different levels of seniority, different roles that they play, different skill sets, lawyers and our support team, I should say ops team, involved in actually going through the process, looking from the empathy point of view around our clients and our team and what we needed to put in place to actually build, and this was our question, how might we build a pricing process which allows us to be more efficient, ensure that we're providing value to our clients, that we're responsive and these types of things. And then we designed it, we prototyped it. That prototype, and I think this is a point that I want to make, sure, that session, I think we did that over a day, and we gathered all these ideas. But it wasn't just the day, and it wasn't just what came out of the day. It was actually then continuing to build that process, and there was a lot of time and effort and a lot of people involved in actually building the different parts of that process as we went. So when we talk about design thinking, I think sometimes people think that it's just going to be the all fun, sometimes being a bit silly, throwing post-its everywhere and brainstorming creative ideas. It's not that. It is the hard work that goes into actually continuing to design and build and develop those ideas as you go along. So I think it was probably about 3 years ago that we had that initial workshop or session that we did. We've continued to build that process. Recently, we actually built a chatbot, which you're seeing on the screen now, called Value on the Joseph platform. And that chatbot actually is the way that we brief our pricing counsel to provide them with the information that they need to make a decision or to assist us with what we need to know as a pricing counsel in terms of coming up with options for our clients. We have iterated the chatbot along the way as well. We've changed it. We're actually just now up to Pricing Counsel 2.0. And so, as I keep saying, this is an ongoing way of working. Probably this is an example of what people do think about when they think about design thinking. It is where more from a visual point of view, but it's much more than that. So last year we collaborated with August, which is a digital design agency, to design a visual privacy policy. I've got the link on the bottom of the screen now. If you want to search up and have a look while I'm talking, all good. And have a look at August's privacy policy. What you'll see is that it's an animated privacy policy. So it's not text-based. It's got text in it, but it actually provides a whole lot of visuals around it too. Our aim around putting that together was that we really started from the purpose point of view. We then looked at the people involved in this, and from an empathy point of view, what we wanted or what August wanted their readers to see from this. So August wanted something that was on brand for them, and you'll see there that that's Fernando, who's an integral part of their brand. So Fernando was very much involved in this, and it becomes an underwater experience for Fernando, working through the different elements of their privacy policy. We wanted it to be easy to read, we wanted it to be accessible, and we wanted it to be written in a language which people would understand. So that was a much longer design project. I think we probably had 6 or 7 sessions around doing that type of thing. Very much an example of bringing together a collaborative, multidisciplinary team. We had designers, developers, lawyers, business developers, and copywriters. So very much all sitting in the same room. And can I say the buzz, using a Hive term, but the buzz in that room when we were throwing ideas, me trying to draw, terrible drawer, and then for the designers, the web designers, to actually be hearing from the lawyers around the different ideas around privacy and what was needed to be conveyed in this. It was a great experience and a really good example of how design thinking can be used to create this type of result. Also working with clients, we've worked with clients to develop better processes, in particular contract approval processes. So one particular example is where there was a fairly complex contract approval process, involved a number of different groups from within the business. And because of the nature of the client's business, it was complex and it needed to be complex in a way. But we got everyone together, all the different business units. We had people, we had lawyers from Hive, myself, and we actually broke down the process right from the start to see how we could design it better for those involved. There were real learnings that came out of it. We found out reasons why some of those people within the business weren't actually using it, because either they didn't think that it was relevant to them, or they saw it as too time-consuming, different types of things. So we were able to develop all of that and grab that information and then produce another or a better contract approval process where everyone had to buy into it and could understand when and where they needed to be involved in it. We're continuing to work on that and also looking at the opportunities to automate that process as well. Okay, designing for future direction. This is where I really am excited about how design thinking can work in an even more important way, and that is with working with teams and groups and organisations and committees to identify purpose, values, vision, strategy, projects, initiatives. Recently worked with a committee I've recently worked with 2 committees who have come together for the first time to decide to get to know each other and then to decide what they needed to focus on in terms of what they want to achieve, and then what strategies would get them there. Design thinking and the mindsets that come with design thinking, the ideas of actually having a bit of fun, being human, showing what you can do and how you can do it, all came to the fore when we did these 2 sessions in different states actually. And so it is, I think, a really exciting way of using design thinking to actually help organisations and groups with that future direction part of it. You'll see there I've got a B, that is be purposeful. That is the next of the chatbots that we're developing at the moment, and that's actually going to be used as a way of helping people prepare for the sessions that we do before we jump into the actual virtual or face-to-face sessions. So that was developed once again using design thinking. I had feedback from attendees who had said sometimes it's better if we actually know what we're going to what we need to think about before we jump into these sessions, rather than having that much more ad lib way of doing it. Interestingly, some of us who are more extroverted, I think, will jump into that and not worry about it. Others prefer to do the independent brainstorm rather than the group brainstorm. So be purposeful has really come out of the fact that we were looking at having empathy for the people that attend our sessions and how we can help them work in a different way, rather than just assuming that everyone will be comfortable in terms of how we run the sessions. Okay, so now if we talk more generally about the mindsets that are needed for design thinking, I have the 4, and I like to think of these as the higher level mindsets that are used. Empathy, collaboration, experimentation, and creativity. So let's dive into them a bit more and drill down into how they work within the legal profession. First of all, empathy. Touched on this a bit before, and this is the sign for empathy, which I discovered a few weeks ago and put on my wall here, thinking that right at this time, it's really important that we show empathy in everything we do across our family life, our work, and really keep harking back to that as much as we can. Really important right now as we have the opportunity to design different ways of doing things. So what is it? Empathy is, in this case, when we're designing, it is actually putting yourself in the shoes of the person you're designing for and the humans that are involved in the process, or will have the benefit of whatever it is that you're designing. It's not assuming. It's not thinking that you know. It's not jumping to a solution. It's actually asking the people who will benefit from what you're doing what their issues are, what their problems are, what they need, how this impacts them. It's actively listening to those responses. It is then looking at what else you need to know in terms of how this will impact them, so you can design something that provides them with a much better experience. It is also observing the people that you're designing for as much as you can too. Some of us don't articulate verbally the fact that we're frustrated with something, so observe the eye rolls every time you give someone a bill to do, or a checklist to follow, or a process to follow, or a document to read. If they're, God, this again, they're not enjoying the experience. So keep eyes open in terms of how that impacts, and ask your clients to observe their teams and where their pain points are, because it's all about actually opening up our minds to have empathy for the people that you're designing for. So really listen to them. Collaboration. This is a picture of Gilead Petrelli, and he in last year broke the 2-hour records. So he did a sub 2-hour marathon, which is absolutely phenomenally amazing. The reason he was able to do that was he is an amazing athlete. There's no doubt about that. He had amazing stats in terms of what he could achieve, and he was capable, and they could see that he was capable of doing this amazing thing, running in under 2 hours, a marathon in under 2 hours. But the really important thing here is that he didn't do it on his own, and it's fascinating to read how they set it all up. You'll see there that he had a number of pacers that ran with him. He also had a number of health experts, obviously, And he also had tech that helped him do this as well. So they had a laser line running in front of him so that he knew, and you might even see it there in the green, so that he knew where he had to be in terms of in relation to that line to actually achieve the pace to go sub 2 hours. So there was a whole lot of infrastructure, skills and support that went around him actually achieving that amazing feat of going under 2 hours. Something that I think that we can learn as an industry and a profession is that we need to draw on the many skills that we have in the profession beyond just the technical skills. Technical legal skills as well. I mean, there are so many that we can talk about, and we can go into that a bit later on, but just really harnessing those skill sets and bringing people on board so that we're making sure that we're designing with all of the knowledge and skills that we can use to get the best result. This is a quote that I love from Cat Moon, who is very vocal around how we can do things better in the law. Through multidisciplinary collaboration, we combine our separate superpowers to create a whole that is so much greater than the sum of its parts. There is so much in that. And once again, that use of superpowers as well. You won't hear me using the term soft skills because I don't like the term soft skills. I like the term essential human skills. We can talk about different skills that we have, legal skills, business development skills, HR skills, tech skills, coding skills, all of those different know-how skills, all of those different things. But the other skills that we need to bring in when we design are some of those human skills, as we've said, around the empathy, the ability to collaborate, and so many more that we can use, creativity that we can use to do that. So I think we really need to extend our thinking beyond just those things that we see every day, but don't look further to see where those additional skills are. And my screen has frozen. Bear with me while it catches up. There we go. So what I'd like you to do, and not now, but just maybe if you're keen to do this, after this session or at some stage soon, just make a list of the skills that you see, not just within your team, but within your organisation, within your network, within your friendship groups, to really start to broaden your ideas about what skills you can bring into a process when you're designing something, be it a process or a service or an offering or something, or any other type of thing that you want to design. But really, the reason I'd love you to do this is because I think if we take that much broader idea of what skills are out there, we can actually see how we can improve whatever we're designing, because there are so many skills that will add more value to what we're doing as well. So I just throw that out there to you as a bit of a challenge. Okay. Experimentation. This is a photo of my 11-year-old daughter, Eve. She has, as you can see, that is not her natural hair colour. That is a very vibrant red. When we all went into lockdown and ISO, Eve, who I consider a fairly brave and creative and experimental kid, said, "Mum, I'm going to dye my hair bright red," which I helped her do. It's really interesting, I think, to see that real hunger for experimenting on things. We bought that from a supermarket. We didn't know what was going to happen. She was happy to experiment because she thought it would be good to see what happened and to give things a go. So that's what we did. It was an interesting process. It's now not nearly as vivid as it is there. But the other thing that she did out of this too was she actually iterated it. So she said, "Mum, this is great, but I need it to be a bit brighter. I'm going to put purple on the top as well." So she's now got two-toned hair. What I love about that is her thirst for actually trying different things and not being worried about whether or not they will work out or they won't. That, of course, is with the writer that it was done in ISO, so she didn't have to go to school. The other thing that I think is a fantastic thing that's happening in a number of industries and in the profession now, and I congratulate the people, especially the regulators who are doing this, is we're seeing sandboxes being developed where people are given permission and a safe place to actually experiment. I think that's just a fundamentally great thing to be happening in the profession, where we can test these things out and really experiment. Okay. Once again, experimentation. So trying again, being aware of failing and the fact that we're not always going to achieve what we need to achieve, and we are going to fail, and we should be learning from that failure as well. So as part of the experimentation mindset, I also see that real need to also embrace failure as we go along as well. Okay. Creativity. So for those of you who know that movie, The Sound of Music, a particular favourite of mine, there are a couple of scenes. There's the one where the Von Trapp children are in their Navy type uniforms. They're constricted. They're not allowed to do anything. They have to line up. There's a real structure to what they do. To then the beautiful scene where Maria makes their play clothes out of curtains, and they have that unrestricted play, and it doesn't matter if they get dirty, and they can be creative and sing in the hills and all of that type of thing. I think there's a lot for us to learn in that as well. How can we actually embrace that idea of being a much more creative industry and profession, and actually spark better ideas? The quote that I've got there is from Dr. Stuart Brown from his book Play, which I'd commend to everyone to read. What he says is, play is fun, but it's anything but trivial. When we play, we're open to the possibility and the sparks of new insights. I think for a profession who are often wedded to precedents, how things have always been done, to actually play and to do things this way doesn't necessarily come easily. So play and creativity is something that is really central to design thinking as well. Some stats. I can't believe that it's 2020, but here we are. 5 years ago, creativity was number 10 on the top 10 skills that the World Economic Forum identified as being skills that you should be developing and needing in the workforce. In 2020, now number 3, my bet is that creativity is going to be even higher and continue to be high on that scale as we continue through into the 20s. And there are a number of reasons for that, which I'll cover a bit later on. Okay, so what stops us as a profession and an industry? And I've identified 5 S's, mainly because if they're S's, it's easier for me to remember them. But the 5 things that I think stops us actually really embracing design thinking are that we're siloists, we're solutionists, we're skeptics, we're serious, and we have a single focus. So let's dive into them a bit more. We're siloists. So when we look at our traditional business model structures, we're often in different practice groups, where we often don't necessarily work across different offices. Our legal ops are siloed from our practice groups. And even within our legal ops, if I can pull in all those other areas that we talked about before, HR, BD, technology, innovation, they are siloed within those silos as well. So what does that mean? It means that collaboration can be very hard across those silos, because we're often being measured in those silos. We're not encouraged to share, we're not encouraged to co-create. And so that doesn't necessarily help us display those traits that design thinking really needs to be able to succeed. My wish is that we can break down those silos as we go. I can see that starting to happen, and I think it's an amazing thing, but I think we've still got a way to go. So siloists, not great for collaboration and multidisciplinary teams. Okay. Solutionists. We have been trained, many of us in the profession, to come to an answer quickly, and that answer is often a legal answer. So we will jump to a solution because we're time poor, or we only have to think about one part of the problem and not the other parts that go with it. So what that means, I think, sometimes is we fall in love with our own ideas. We know we've got it right. We're perfectionists. We've got the answer. Here you go. That doesn't really help us when we're looking at taking an empathetic approach, because we haven't actually necessarily asked the end users or the people who have the problem how it's affecting them or what they might need in terms of designing the answer and the solution for them. So that can inhibit the way that we actually do this. Skeptics. So we are a skeptical profession, there's no doubt about that. I love this study that's been done by Dr. Larry Richard, and he says that on a measure of skepticism, the average lawyer is more skeptical than 90% of the norm. There's a reason why we're skeptical. I think we've been trained to look for the problems. We've been trained to be risk averse. But being a skeptic doesn't necessarily help us in terms of actually thinking about what the possibilities could be, because it tends to make us less ready to experiment. We're more fearful of failing and that type of thing as well. So very important, and I understand it's very important for us to also look at the risks involved in things, but we do need to have much more of an open mindset to how we actually do these things as well. We're also serious, and I totally understand that. We're serious because, you know, we have ethical and moral obligations as a profession. We're serious because the problems that our clients have are often serious, and the ramifications for them of things going wrong, very important. But that doesn't mean that we have to be serious all the time, and it doesn't mean that we don't necessarily use our creativity and re-inject some fun into what we do. Obviously, there are times to do that and there are times that we don't do that, but we don't always have to be really serious about what we do. Single focus. I think we also, as a profession and an industry, we're often focused on the law and what happens in the legal profession, rather than taking the opportunity to actually look outside and see where we can be inspired by other, not just other professions, but other industries, other ways of working, other processes that are totally different to ours, but have already spent the time focusing on user and client experience and that type of thing. And we've got a real ability to be able to do that type of thing if we did not take a single focus to it. So, and I must say, it might sound like I'm being overly critical of our industry, and I'm not. But the first thing that I'll say about that with those mindsets is I have been guilty at one time or another, and I think I still am, of every one of those mindsets. And sometimes I'm continually reminding myself not to actually fall into that way of thinking. And it does take a discipline to actually pull yourself out of that way. So first to say, it's not necessarily an easy thing to change, and it's not necessarily something that I have found easy. One of the mindsets that I find particularly hard is that idea of actually not jumping to a solution, because I have an idea and I think that's fantastic, let's go with it, and then realise, no, I've really got to step back and go through the process and live with the ambiguity as we go through it. Okay, so the next part of what I want to talk about is why we need design thinking now in the COVID world. Disruption brings the opportunity for us to rethink why and how we do things. Wow, have we been disrupted? I mean, now is the time for us really to be thinking about how we design or redesign processes and how we work. So now is the time to do it. And I actually think there has been a mind shift in the way that we think about things in the profession and the world generally. And I think that brings us an opportunity to actually really start to use design thinking in a really tangible way within the profession and the legal industry. So as I say there, now is the time to design and to improve the experience. So let's look at, I think, the 8 things that I have identified about why now is a good time to do it and why we need design thinking now. This is a human crisis. It's a great leveller. We can take a broader view. There is uncertainty in the way that we're doing things. There's a higher degree of tolerance. We're being creative by necessity. There's a lot more, I think, connectedness and culture that's being developed in this world. And we're also really thinking about the future. So let's drill down into those a bit more. It's a human crisis. It's a very human crisis. People are dying. People are sick. Our resources are stretched. We're seeing leaders under pressure. We're seeing leaders being more authentic, thankfully, than they have been for a long time. And we're really, even as individuals, our work and our lives and our families are all mashing together. And we're really having to adapt to a different way of thinking. And we've really got to be thinking about the way that that's impacting on the people around us, humans around us, how what we're doing is working for them or not working for them. So what does that mean? I think it means we really have to have more empathy. And I'm seeing that now, even in meetings that I'm having in the profession. We're really starting to see people have much more of a focus on the human element of what we're doing. We're all in this together. I love that. And I think, and we hear that quite a bit at the moment. It is the great leveller. Everyone is having to work in the same way at the moment. People are having to work from home. When I say that, though, I will say there are some that are obviously doing it harder than others. There are some who have got younger children. There are some who are homeschooling. There are some who don't have the office space to work in their houses, whereas others do. So I'm not saying it's completely level, but what I'm saying is that everyone around the world in different organisations mostly are having to deal with all of this and are all working from home. They're having to work out different ways of staying connected, communicating. I think what that means is that the silos that we talked about before, or the barriers that we've talked about before, become less relevant. It's a great leveller. Everyone's having to do the same thing. And what I think that brings is that opportunity for ideas to come from anywhere within an organisation, especially when we're looking at redesigning processes or experiences for people. Everyone's working from home. People will be thinking about what they're doing that's making it easier for them, or where they've got the real pain points, why it's not working for them. That idea that we talked about before around actually identifying ideas and developing them, those ideas can come from anywhere at the moment, and we should really be embracing them from anywhere. What does that mean? That shift in mindset where we've got everyone, no matter what your skill, your seniority, your role, where you are, you know, you're all working in the same way. It's breaking down the silos, but it's also, I think, the opportunity to increase collaboration, because everyone can start to work together and think more broadly about how they connect within their organisation. A broader view. So we talked before about that single focus. What we're seeing at the moment is, once again, everyone working in the same way. It's not just the legal profession and industry that's been having to work in this way. Many other occupations are having to work in this way as well. I don't know about you, but I'm hungry at the moment to see how other organisations, and not just in Australia, but around the world, are dealing with this. And there's a lot of information out there to look at, but it's fascinating. And it's a fascinating way to actually look outside the legal world and get outside our bubble to actually see how other industries and groups are dealing with this. So other professions, other sectors, other countries. Let's look at that and take a much broader view. I had the opportunity to have a lovely friendship group, and we all come from different sectors. So I'm in legal, another friend in the health industry, another in tourism, another in IT, another in teaching. Amazing to be able to talk to them about how COVID has impacted their worlds, the way that they work, how they connect with the people that they deliver the services to or work with as well. So really, we've got that opportunity to take a much broader approach and see what others are doing and how we can bring that in and design it and use it to inspire us to design within the legal industry. So Let's not be single focused around that. Uncertainty. Unprecedented times, challenging times, uncertain times. We hear it all at the moment. It is uncertain times. Design thinking has with it that idea of actually living with ambiguity, not jumping to a solution. And that's exactly where we find ourselves in at the moment. If we design something for tomorrow in this environment, it may not be relevant for next week or the week after or next year. And that's a good thing for us to actually be able to come to terms with. We need to be able to not be solutionists, and we need to actually live with the ambiguity of the fact that things are going to change. That's what design thinking brings to us. It brings us the focus on empathy and curiosity to design, and to be agile enough to iterate and make it different along the way, not fall in love with our ideas, actually use that process to allow us to have that agility going forward. So uncertainty is a good thing to embrace at the moment. We don't need to necessarily know what's going to happen next. We just need to be ready to change when it does happen. Tolerance. I don't know about you, but I have seen an amazing increase in tolerance lately. You know, we're dealing with, as I am at the moment, these things should be moving and they're not, but we're dealing with using technology to connect. We're dealing with technology issues. There's more tolerance, and this term that I love, having virtual patience. It's not working, don't worry, it's okay. We can get through it, just keep going. What that means, I think, for us is that there's a willingness to give things a go and experiment. You know, we're seeing that now. There's less skepticism about doing things differently. So from the point of view of what we're seeing, some solid examples, you know, e-signatures, using breakout rooms in Zoom to have conferences, mediations in Zoom with waiting rooms or different platforms and that type of thing. So there's this real tolerance now that things don't have to be perfect and that we can just get on and do it because we have to. So that mindset change is there for us to embrace as well going forward. And you'd think I'd get this right, wouldn't you? I keep going to the wrong slide. Okay, next one, creativity by necessity. How many of you have seen the ironing board set up as the office? You know, the cookbooks under the monitors, stand-up desks, lots more plants happening in your office space at home. We've had to do this. It's by necessity that we've had to be creative. But there's also the ability for us to be curious. You know, what if we work this way? What if I stagger my work day by actually going and working in another room at a different time? Or what if I actually use a different communication platform to do this work that I need to do? We can actually spend the time being more curious about how we can work and how we can improve things for our clients and our team, and actually start to think much more creatively in the way that we do things. And I think there's a move now in this world to be more, to give permission to be more creative. I think, you know, we're seeing that a bit more. Connectedness and culture, and this is where I think the fun part of it comes too. There's much more of a focus on staying connected. At Hive, we've been working remotely, or had the choice to work remotely, for 6 years now. But in this COVID world, we are spending much more time being connected, having fun, doing the virtual quizzes that everyone seems to be doing, finding fun ways of actually connecting and using play and rituals, our Hive Fives, different sorts of things. We're being less serious. We're seeing into people's homes. We're seeing that, you know, people might be under stress when they're trying to deal with this new way of doing things, and trying to bring humour into that to help them through and be more human in the way that we're doing things. There's much more of an appetite for doing that as well. So very much that connectedness and culture I see as an opportunity for us going forward. Thinking of the future. I don't know about anyone else, but for me, I keep thinking, when we come out of lockdown, what's going to happen? And everyone seems to think, what's it going to look like? What's the new world going to look like? Is it going to be the new normal? My fear is that we will go back to what we've done before, and all of those beautiful changes to mindsets, the tolerance, the being more creative, the being more empathetic, will have lost the opportunities to actually collect those ideas from people within our organisations. And so I think now there is absolutely this time now where people are thinking of the future and what it's going to be like. Do we need less office space? Can our entire team work from home? Can we be more streamlined with the way that we provide our services to our clients? Can we do that, to design that, document that process better? Absolutely, we can. Now is the time to act, because there is that opportunity to do that. And I really think that design thinking is the framework that we can use to sustain the changes that have already been made in the way that we're working at the moment. And we can look to design the future, not just of work, but the future in terms of the way that we work with our design for our teams and our clients. Just to finish off now, so hopefully we've got some time for some quick questions, but virtual design thinking, it can be done. So don't worry that we don't have to be in a room doing post-it storms. There are some amazing digital platforms out there, collaboration platforms. I'm using Mural and Zoom. There are others out there as well. Miro's another one. There are lots out there that can be used where you can be in different parts of the world and still doing design thinking sprints. It can all be done, which is a great thing. So my challenge to you is to give it a try. After this, just jot down some small things that you think need redesigning. Don't go in too big, is my suggestion. Think of something small, something that you might have found painful during this period, and think about how you could design it and use that process to actually design it. Very happy to talk to anyone who would like to hear more about the way that we work and what we do. And I'll throw over to Terry.
So thank you very much again, Mel. Thank you, everyone. And see you back in June. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.